All right, so to get started here on creating our list view, there's a few things we need to do. The first one is obviously make sure that we have something in our database, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to be able to extract items from our database that we created previously. So if you are just now joining us, I would suggest you go back the previous sections and look for the database, introduction to the database, SQLite, and how to create and everything. Okay? Very well. So if you were just following us, then you will realize that this will all make sense. Now, before we go forward here, I have already added some data in our database. In fact, I cleared everything else from the database, deleted that previous application. Notice we are still in the same project, the contact manager, okay? So I clear everything out because I wanted to have a clean slate. So do that and make sure that everything is clear. And once everything is clear, then what you need to do is uncomment this code here. In fact, you will have to type all of this, right? So essentially what I'm doing here, we did like this before, right? We say contact A, new contact, and pass the name and the phone. So what I did to simplify our life, I went back to contact.java and I created a few other constructors here. So we have this empty constructor, so that will allow us to create contact like this, okay? But also I created another constructor which we created together where we are passing ID, name, and phone and everything. So this is actually called inside of our database handler when we create everything. And notice that the ID, like I said before, is taken care of when we actually add a contact. Very good. So I created this new contact constructor here where we just pass the string name and the phone number and we set it up there. Okay, that's very important for this to work like this. Okay, so if you can comment this out like that, then you can see that we say db.add contact and we're just passing objects like that with dummy data. So do that. I'm not going to do that again because I already have all of those items in our database. Do that, add your own names and whatever you want, and then save and see if you can see all of that stuff. In fact, at this point, if we save this and go ahead and run, we should be able to see all the names that I have added previously. Let's go to our logcat right now. It'll take a few seconds, but this is from previous. And nevertheless, you can see we have all of these awesome names that I've added. Very good. All right, so how do we then create from all of this data, all this context, how do we create a list view? Well, to create a list view, we have to add a few things, set things up in our user interface. So let's go to our main XML, make this a little bit bigger. Let's close that down, close this down as well. And what we're going to do here is we are going to search for a list view. So it says list, there we go. So it is indeed a widget. I'm going to drop it inside there. And let's make sure that we add all of the constraints because it's going to just take the entire screen anyway. And the other thing I like to do, I like to change this to wrap content, everything, so that it's all wrapped in and nicely. And instead of having dynamic, I'm going to just call this list view. Okay, for the ID. So this ID, we're going to use it to then infer our list view and start adding items. And you can see right away once we add this list view, let's go inside here. It's hard to see, but there is this little line at the bottom there that delimits the first item from the second and so forth. So you can see here, it is all in a list manner. That's why we call it list view. Okay, so this is of course a visual representation. If we run this right now, nothing is going to show, all right, in our user interface. But at least we know we have our list view. So next we're going to go to our main activity.java there. That's where we're going to create a few instance variables at the top here. Mainly, the first one is going to be private, list view type. Okay, make sure it's list view. Call this list view. We're going to use that. Okay. And the next thing we're going to do, we're going to say private. I'm going to create an array list, which will contain string types. I'm going to call this contact string, like that. Okay, we'll see that. So let's go ahead and instantiate all of that inside of our on create here. So I'm going to say list view, just like any widget, we can say find by ID and find our list view. Okay, so now we grabbed our list view. Next thing here, I'm going to create a contact string, instantiate it and say array list. It's going to be of strings like this. Forgot to say new. That's why we're having issues here. Let's see. Just say new array list. In fact, it looks like we don't have to add these string types there because it's already inferred that this is indeed an array list of strings. So we could have added different type, but I'm going to add strings here in this array list that we can add all the contacts, names, and so forth. Okay. Very good. So what I'm going to do next here, that I have our contact strings, going to be an array list of strings. Okay, so I'm going to get the names so that we can show in our application. So I have all of that stuff. So now how do we put together this list view so it works? Well, in order for us to actually create a list view, we need to instantiate another class called array adapter and pass in a list. Now, the reason why we need to do this, and we'll see later when we looked at a different version of list views, which are the ones we're going to be using the most because they are called recycler view. They have other greater benefits as opposed to just list views. That's when I'm going to talk more about adapters and the reason why they're important. But in this case here, think of an adapter just like in real world. It is a device that allows us to adapt data of certain format or data in general to something totally different. So it is somehow a translator, if you will, right? So data comes in a certain form and it knows how to put it all together, mesh it all together so that another piece will be able to take that data and do whatever it needs to do. Okay, so we're going to create an array adapter. So in fact, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say private array adapter. And of course, I'm going to also make them string like that, call array adapter. Now that we have our array adapter, and notice that we also have here, we've seen this before, we're just looping through and getting all of our contacts. So as we loop all through, what I need to do is actually get the names from our object contact to add to our list. Okay, let's change this. Instead of contact string, I'm going to say contact array list to differentiate from another one. So I'm going to call this contact array list like that. Okay, much better. Very good. So that means now I can actually add that contact array list here and start adding objects. Well, really what I'm adding is strings. So the first thing I'm going to be adding here, I'm going to say contact.getName. So essentially what I did here. Now this contact array list, remember, is expecting type strings. That's why we're saying we're going to add the contact.getName because it returns a string. That's all. So it has to be inside of our for loop because we want to use this contact list here to then populate our array adapter, in this case our list view. Okay, so now once we have that, we need to instantiate or create our array adapter because we've just at the top here created this array adapter instance variable. Now we have to initialize it. Well, this array adapter will know exactly what to do. Check this out. If I say array adapter like that, okay, I'm going to say is equal to new array adapter. Now this array adapter, we need to pass a few things to it so that it knows exactly what to do and how to display things. Because remember, adapter in this case, it's just a middleman, if you will, that takes all the data that will then be used by the user interface to show that data. So in here, I'm going to put in a new line. I'm going to say this. That's the first thing we're going to pass. The next thing we're going to pass here is going to be the XML layout of how things are going to work. Now, because we are going to be leveraging what Android Studio has built in for array adapters, right? We are not going to create our own XML. There are XMLs that we can attach to our array adapter at this point, right? So that we don't have to do that ourselves. So we can attach one from Android dot, and I'm going to say R resources dot layout. Now we're accessing the android.r.layout. So this would tell you that what we're going to be about to be accessing, it's not going to be something that we created. It's going to be from the Android namespace, from the Android internal libraries. Just to simplify. Now you look here, there's all these different ones we can use, right? But what we are interested in is what we call the simple list item _1. What that means this will just allow us to have one text view inside there, which is what we want because that's all we want to show at this point. At this point, we just want to show the name. Okay? So you can enter, there we go. And then last but not least, what we're going to be passing is the actual data values. What is our data values? It's going to be our contact array list like that. All right. So this array adapter here, we instantiate it and we have to pass this information so that Android system knows, okay, this array adapter here, it's going to pass this as the context. So main that this activity. So it knows exactly where it's supposed to be in the tree of activities and user interfaces, everything else. And then we're passing, okay, how are we going to lay out this data? Well, we're just going to say we just want a text view that will show that. So we go to layouts, but not our own layout. This is indeed the Android namespace. So it is built in the Android ecosystem. And then of course we have to pass the data. That's it. Well, not quite. At this point here, once we have that, we have our adapter. And now we have to add to our list view. Because here we need the adapter to adapt this data, which we're passing everything. So it knows how to adapt this list item 1, right? XML, takes this array and puts all inside. And now once the array adapter is ready, our adapter knows exactly what it's supposed to be done. We have to attach it to our list view, because the list view, it is indeed what is going to display the data. Make sense? Okay, we'll talk more about this, don't worry. So list view dot, there's a method called set adapter in which we can just pass our array adapter as such. And that's it. Very simply, we just leverage what Android ecosystem provides, the SDK, to create a very simple list view. Okay, let's save this and give it a run. If all goes well, we should see a very nice application. And look at that. Okay, our items are showing. You can click on them and everything is good. Now, the beauty here also is that you can use a click event, or you can attach a click event to our list view. Look at this. So I can come here and say attach event listener to list view. Okay, so list view dot set on, look at that. I can use the on item click listener, which means now we can have access to each item that it's being displayed. We can have access to do whatever we want when users click on it. So I'm going to say enter, brand new on item click listeners, hit enter, and then we have all of this goodness that we already know. So these are the methods. In fact, this is the method, I should say, the interface that is being implemented here on item clicked. Right? So we have the item position, we have the view, we have the long ID. In fact, I can come down here and say log D, say contact list. I'm going to pass the position because it's passed along. So now inside here, I can go ahead and say, for instance, I want just to show the position, right? Because the position is going to be the position of each item that we are showing inside of our application, inside of our list view. So let's say list like that. Let's run. In fact, I can just go ahead and refresh that. If I click James, let's see in our log, we should see, let's get rid of that. That's going to be list. Look at that. It says 0. So now it's showing the index that was clicked. Okay, so there we go. Item click 0. Let me click this second one. It says 1. I'll make it probably bigger. There we go. I'm going to go to Helena. So that's going to be 2. So remember, it all starts from 0 when we talk about array lists or arrays, right? The index is always starts with 0. So this is 0, 1, 2. Karimo is 3. Now, because I know that I have our array, this contact array list here, if I wanted to get an item, let's say I want to get the James, the actual name James from this first item here, I can do that if I want to get that when it's clicked, right? So I can pass this position because this position is just an index. So if we have the actual array list or array and we have the index, you understand now we can actually get what's inside of that index, right? So I can say, let's see, what is that called? Contact array list. I'm going to pass our position. All right, so it's going to give us a problem here. It's fine. We can just see what it's going to say. It's going to replace that. So I can say now contact list.get. Right, that makes sense because this is an array list, not just a list. So I couldn't just put our square brackets like that. My bad. There we go. So contact.get pass position. We should get the actual item in that position, which in this case, when we click, we should get James instead of 0. Okay, let's refresh real quick here. All right, let's see how this works. Click here. Look at that. It says James. Ah, very cool. Let's see. It's hard to see everything, isn't it? But okay, let's go. Greg. There's Greg. Helena. I should say Helena. I can keep scrolling down. Let's go and look at the last one. Let's click on Gemma. Look at that. There it is. Karate. There we go. So you can see now we have all these powers. In fact, if you wanted, let's say if it was a little bit more complicated application, if you wanted to go to a different page, right? You can just click, go to a different page and actually take the name, the item of this row that we've clicked and pass along that data. all sort of things that we can do. But what's really important here is that we're able to use what Android already has for us. So we created an array list, right, to get all our contacts. We also created the array adapter. It's all given by the Android SDK, as you saw here. So this is the adapter that connects the data and the user interface. So without this array adapter here, it would be very hard for us to get our data, which we are passing in our constructor here, to then set it up with our list view. Very good. I'll see you in the next video.